Hello and welcome to a new Redbex how-to video. This video will be about a specific import feature which Redbex offers. You know, Redbex has quite a big variety, a big growing variety of different input formats which are available for importing text files to the database, to the features. And most of them are quite bound to a specific format, to a specific text format, and also to a specific feature type. So they're bound to a specific use case, for example, inclinometer import or 3D movement import, etc. So the most import formats have a fixed use case and import a fixed file format to a predefined feature type. But Redbex also offers a more general import format which can be defined to your personal needs, to the needs of your project, and offer a possibility to define the format of the file and also define to which feature type you would like to import the data being held by this file you would like to import. So I would like to show you first what the file looks like we are trying to import. So here you can see I have here prepared an ASCII file, and this ASCII file actually is holding information of a meteorological measurement station. So you can see the file is basically an ASCII file. It's line oriented, which means every line contains the values of one measurement, which is in terms of Redbex one observation, and this file is also organized in columns. So the columns you see here are separated using this semicolon, and we see here the columns have different information. The first one is the name of the station, of the point actually where the measurements has been made. Then we have here a timestamp, we have here some air pressure, air temperature, precipitation, and at least at the last column we have a flag which tells us if the value was erroneous or not. And so now we'd like to import this file to Redbex, and we would like to import this file to a feature type which is called, let's just have a look here, it should be environmental. Yes, here we have it. It's called the meteorological situation feature, and this has a possibility. Let's have a look to the observation property structure. It has the possibility to hold some properties. The first is the air temperature, then we have the pressure at mean sea level, we have precipitation and also pressure, so it's exactly what we have in our file, what we would like to import if we compare it here. So this is a perfect feature type for our file, and so now let's just start to configure the import. I close this window again. So at first we have to make an import definition. So I will not click here, I will just click a new import, so I get a new scratch import definition, a blank import definition. I now have to just fill it out step by step, and then I will just run it by click this run button here, and I hope that everything works fine, and we will have the data imported to our Redbex system. Now first let's give the import a name, so I will call it meteorological import. I would also be possible, it would be possible here to add some description. I'll leave this blank because for now it's not necessary. And then first important thing is to define the input format. And so now here I have a list of all the input formats which are available right now. So the list will be growing, of course, and as you see, there are some input formats which are bound to a specific case, a specific input case, and in our example we would like now to use the generic text format import, which gives us the possibility to have more flexibility in defining the import file and the structure of the file. The next step is called the general settings. Here I have on the first I have the possibility to give a name for the import session. So what is the import session? So actually we are right now just making a kind of a template for an import. We're just defining the import, but the import is actually not executed. If we execute it, this executed import then will be called an import session in terms of Redbex, and the import session has some possibility. For example, the import session has knowledge of what data was imported to the Redbex database. So whenever you made a mistake and imported wrong data to Redbex, you can remove this data by just deleting this import session. So the import session is the execution of one import. I just give it any name right now because for our test case it's not really important to have a speaking session name. Then I have to also to define a target data domain, because the import usually is able to create features itself. So wherever a new feature has to be created, the import will create it, and then of course the import job has to know to which data domain this new feature has to be created to. We could define an alias scheme also. I don't need it in my case right now here. And then I have some possibilities here. At first, I would like the import to create new features wherever there will be necessary. We will see this afterwards if we are getting to the details what this actually means. Then there is a possibility to configure whenever a file is imported a second time or a third time, whatever, what should be happen if the re-imported file has different values and the values already have been imported in a previous import session. So then there are basically two possibilities. The first is to ignore the import file and keep the values which resulted from a previously import session, and the other possibility would be that whatever a new import of a new version of the file would deliver, these values should be written to the database. And actually this is the one which seems to me more logical. I would like to have the same information in my database which are also in the files I'm importing. So whenever the import files will be changed by whatever reason, this change should also be being regarded in the database, and the values should be changed there also. The next is also quite nice. Whenever the import finds an error which is caused by an error in the line of the import file, then there are two possibilities. The first one would be that the import stop and you can just start to debug the import, or the import just skips the errors and tries to import the next line. And this is what I'm just configuring here. If wherever there is an error in the import file, the import itself should not be stopped. Then of course we have to define where the import files will come from. So how does the import find its sources? And there we have to define the sources, and therefore Redbex offers three different possibilities, which are the following. I have the possibility to get the import file by using the file depot, which is here on my right side. So this is known already. You have the possibility to use the file depot to drag files from your local machine to the application server machine by just dragging them here, and then you have here the depot content, and you have the possibility to just drag the files to the goal wherever you need them. In our case, I would then drag the file to this area here, and the file would be used as a source for our import. We have also the possibility to use an FTP server, so this will be done in most cases for the production. If many files have to be imported and they will be delivered automatically, then you just put them on any FTP server and define in Redbex here the FTP server credentials, and here the address of the server and username and password, and then Redbex is able to just connect to that FTP server and download the import files itself and import them one by one. The third case is more likely to be used in a test environment. Here you have the possibility to use a path of the machine where the application server is installed. So this is most likely not a production scenario where you would use this one, because you would have to access the machine where the application server of Redbex is installed. But if you have, then you can configure here a path on the application server machine, and this path then would be used to load the files for the import from. So this, for example, would be a case if you have a test machine and the database of Redbex and also the application server and the client, all of the three of them are installed on your local machine. Then of course you have the possibility to access the local machine where the application server is also installed, and then you just configure a path on your local machine, and you do not have to move the files to any FTP server or using the file depot for uploading the files. In my case, I will just use the file depot as a source for my files, and I will just drag and drop them to the file depot and upload them to the machine where the application server is installed. And then last but not least is the most important thing I have to define now: the format of the source files I'm trying to import. Until now, Redbex does not know anything of the internal structure of the file I'm willing to use in my import right now. So here I have to define everything about the internal structure of my file. So let's go through the settings step by step. The first settings tells me that there is a possibility to store the files to my import session. So this is very interesting. If you try to debug your import, if there are some mistakes from case to case, you have the possibility to store your source files to the import session. And this is, for example, interesting if you're getting your source file from an FTP server and the administrator of the system actually does not have access to the FTP server. Then he has the possibility to access this file in case of an error by just opening the import session, and the files, the source file for that specific import will be stored to the import session, and then he can open the source file and check it if there is some problem in the content of this file. So I don't need this because I of course have access to the files I'm trying to import right now, so I won't check this option here. And then the next one is I have to define a string for the Boolean value true. Wherever there is a column in my input file which has Boolean values, as the input file is just a text file, an ASCII file, the Boolean values will be represented by some string, whatever this is. In the most cases this will be just the words true and false. And if you have a look again to our file here, we can see also the last column, which is the erroneous column, is a Boolean value, and here we see that false and true are the values which we find in the last column. This means actually I have to configure the string for true. It is written in lowercase. True would be the string which represents the Boolean value true, and whatever other value is there, it will just be then interpreted as the value false. For example, this could also be true is the number 1, and usually then the file would contain 0 wherever false should be coded as a value, but in our case we will have the words true and false in our column. The same goes for the null value. Wherever you have files where they contain null values, a null value means that there is not any value at all for some reason. So you have to define some string which will be interpreted as a null value. This usually could be this combination of strings, and in some cases they also use some big negative number or whatever. So this has to be checked by the technical documentation of the system which delivers your files. In my case right now I don't have any null value, so I don't have to define some string in this setting here. The column separator, if we again have a look to our source file here, we can see the column separator here is the semicolon, so we have to tell our input format that the semicolon will has to be used as a separator, so I use this one here, and I don't have the case that there will be more than one semicolon be there, so there is only one, so I don't have to merge them. This is just a special case. Then there is has to be defined the number of header lines in my file, and again, if I look to my file here, I can see there is only one header line, so this is already configured fine for me. I have only one header line, and then wherever there are some comments in my input file, I would have the possibility here to define a comment designator, but I don't use comments in my files. I can leave this blank, and then I have now one setting which actually comes to the core of our definition. Now I have to define which column contains which information for my property of the observation of my feature I will import to. And as this setting is quite complex, I can't do it here in one line, and therefore Redbex uses a so-called U configuration. This means I can just click here at the end at this little pencil, and then I will be provided with a new window which gives me now the possibility to define the internal structure of my import file. In the first type, I'm asked for the goal where the data has to go to in Redbex, because this of course gives me then the possibility to name the property of the observation of the features, because they of course differ from one feature type to each other. So here I have to configure that our goal feature type will be the meteorological information feature, and here we have it, meteorological situation. This is the name of the feature we are going to import to. One import might result in quite a big number of features that are created. For example, if we have a look in our file here, we see that the station here names the different weather stations which are used, and here this import file already has 3 different weather stations, so this import should result in 3 different features, of course, because every feature would then be created for one weather station, and I just can open one after the other weather stations and features to have a look to the imported data. And so as there could be quite a big number of different features, Redbex offers me the possibility to create a container feature and put all the created features in that container feature. So for example, I just could use here a simple group. That would mean that after the import I have one feature of type simple group, and this simple group feature will contain every feature of type meteorological situation which was created during this import. I do not want to use this feature right now, so I leave this blank. And then there is now the question where the feature name is read from. I have here different possibilities. The feature name could be read from the column of the import file. This is fine for us because we already have seen that our import file here has a column. This is the first column which gives us a name of the station where the measurements result from, and this station name will be fine for us to be used as a name for the feature we are creating. What other options are there? I could also use a fixed feature, which means if I had already created a feature of type meteorological situation, then I just would be able to drag and drop this feature here, and all the imported data then would be stored to that fixed feature here, which I define here. And last but not least, I have also the possibility that Redbex just takes the file name of my import file. In my case, this would be meteor data example, and this string then would be used as a name for the feature. But this would mean in my case that I would have only one feature which had the name meteor data example, and all the observations, all the measurements here would be stored as observation for this one feature. And in this case, this does not seem very logical and is not actually what we would like to have. So I put it back to read from column, and then as the import is able to create features, and the feature we are creating here, the meteorological situation feature, is able to hold spatial data, we should also define the spatial system for this feature. The contained feature is the feature which will have the observations containing the imported data, and so I define this feature. Actually, the meteorological situation feature should be use a projected coordinate system, and I just use here WGS 84. So whatever feature will be created during this import, it will be based on this spatial system which I just configured here. The same would go for container features, but as we didn't define to create container features, this setting here is inactive. So now we defined the goal, and as now we defined the feature type which we would like to import to, Redbex also now has the possibility to offer us the properties of the observation of this feature we're trying to import to, and we can map the columns of our input file to the properties of this feature type. And this will be done on the next tab. This is called the column mapping, and now we just make a column mapping for every column we would like to import, and in our case we would like to import all the columns to Redbex, and we will just start by adding one column mapping. The first number here tells me which column we are talking about, so 1 just means the first column, and if you have a look to our input file, then we see here the first column is the name of the station, and the name of the station we already were defining that the station name should be used as the name for the feature which is to be created, and so I just map the column number 1 to the property which is called the feature name. Then I have two more possibilities here. I can configure some pre-processing and post-processing for this string which I am reading from the file, and the pre-processing offers me the possibility to join columns to be used as one. So I could use, for example, the first, the second and the third column together, put them together and read them as one string, and then use this resulting string for being stored to a property of the feature. In our case, we don't need this. Then we have the post-processing. The post-processing gives me the possibility either to split the string which is imported from one column. So I can use, I can just split, for example, the date column. If you have a look at the date column, I could split this one by using this sign here and then tell the system, please use the second word which is resulting, and the second word would then be, for example, the month in this case. We don't need this either. And then I have also the possibility to skip some characters from the beginning and the end, so I could tell the system skip the first two characters of this column and skip the last characters, and just use the resulting string for imported to the observation, to the property. So we don't need any of this pre or post processing, so we're fine as it is right now. So let's go on and map the second column. The index is raised here by once automatically, so now I have the index number 2, and if we have a look to our file, the second index here, the second column is the timestamp. So now we have to map the second column to the sampling timestamp, and if we, this is a little trick, if we just map the sampling timestamp, then the system automatically will use the same timestamp also for the result timestamp. So we don't have to map the second column twice, it is done automatically by the system. So the number 3, as I can see in my file, is the mean sea level pressure. I just map it here to the according property. Mean sea level pressure is here. number 4 I can see now is the air temperature, so I map this one to the property air temperature. Then we have number 5, which is the precipitation. Hopefully we have also a property which is called precipitation. Here it is. Then we have 6. This is 6 is again air temperature. So no, it's air pressure, sorry. I should have looked it up. So we had now 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. I made some mistake, obviously, because 6 is precipitation, not 5. So let me just go through the mappings. For 1 is the feature name, then 2 we have the timestamp, 3 is the mean sea level, 4 then is the air temperature, 5 is precipitation, I'm right, yes. Then 6 we have is the air pressure, and 7, the last column we have available in our file, is erroneous, the erroneous flag, so giving us information if the measurement was fine or if it was not fine. So now this is enough for the mapping. We did it. As we did quite a lot of setting right now, I would suggest that we save this setting in a template so we could use it afterwards when we are going to reuse the system and open the client again. Then we will find our import setting by the name meteorological import, as we defined here in the first tab. So one thing we have to do in the format setting, which is define the format of the date time stamp we use in our file. So therefore let's have a look again to the file. This is the format of this part here, the date time stamp. It only consists of a date actually, so therefore I would suggest to take the reference manual, and I will just put the window like this. So we have some space here, and what we're looking for actually is the date time format, and here we have it already, date time formatting. Here we have the possibility which Redbex offers to define the date and time strings. So here we see some examples. If I would use, for example, a lowercase d, then this would result in case of US culture being set. So there are some short patterns. This is now this table here. If we look at the bottom of the table, it should tell us what it contains. So here's the standard date time format setting according to the culture which is actually set. So we have here a big possibility of formats. Little d, lowercase d would be the short date pattern, uppercase d would be the long date pattern according to the culture, and so on. So this is offers a big palette of varieties, but I prefer to do the date time formatting more specific on my own, and I use how do they call it? Let's have a look. The custom date and time formatting strings. So I have to define every digit, actually every character which contains the date time, but then I'm quite sure that I did the right thing. So for example, I see here the year is being coded at the first position, so I have to define this for Y's here as a place for year. So I start my date time format during this for Y's here. Then as the next would be the months. The months in my case is not given like one digit here, but it's given as 0 ones like this, so I have to define it as 2 uppercase m's. Lowercase m's would be a minute, so this would be the wrong definition. So I just having followed this by uppercase m's, and then I have to define the day, and the day also is defined by a leading 0. Where can I find the day? It should be here. This is the day of the month from 01 to 31, so double D is the right format string for coding the day. So in any case, disregarding the actual culture which I'm working on, the date time format will be just fine, because I did it by a specific specification here. And now anyway I have to define the culture, and the culture defines two things. It defines on one case the date time format, but I did the date time definition now disregarding the culture. So the second thing is interesting, which is the decimal separator. And the decimal separator could be either a point or a comma. So let's have a look what we use in our case. If we have a look for this number, for example, we can see here the point is used as a decimal separator, and now I just have to know, I could look it up but I know it by heart, that English culture uses the point as a decimal separator. If it would be a comma, I would have to use, for example, German culture in this setting here, and then the comma would be the character which would be used as a comma separator. So now we're quite finished. I save again my definition here, and I'm going back to the sources, and I'm going to try it out. Let's have a look where my file is. Here I have the file which I'm trying to import. This is the file we just were looking at, and I'm dragging it to my file depot, and now it's here on the place where my application server is installed, and I can use it now as a source for my import format. Now we did everything which is necessary for the import, and I just can execute this import, which will result in an import session in the application server. Let's just do it. I can see here the import was started, and it should not take too long because it's not that much information in the file, and already we can see here the import file was finished. And if I would like to, I can open the log file, and here I can see 3 features were created and were found. We have seen this already, that our import file actually should result in 3 features, because we have 3 different names of the station. Here we have MET 03, 05 and 07, and also we can see that quite some observations were created here. So in total it's 30 observations. This also goes with our file. We have here 31 line, and we have to subtract 1 for the header line, so it's 30 observations in our file. So this looks quite fine. So now let's have a look to recently created features, and here we see that we have 3 features. They have, of course, the name which we were choosing in our definition of the import, according to the names of the columns in the import file. Now let's open these features and have a look to the observations. And if we're lucky, and I'm quite sure we should see that the observations contain all the measurements that were named in our import file. So let's have a look. MET 03 has quite a lot of observations here. 03, this one should be this one. So this is the date, the 2nd of June. we have 1016.3, we have here 1014.6, we have 15.9 degrees here, and there was no precipitation, so this looks quite fine. Also, let's have a look to another. Feature 05, for example, let's look for the measurement on the 13th. Here it is. We have 1000.3, it's there, and we have 998.6, it's there. We have 14.4 degrees, and there was some precipitation, 1.5 liter per square meter. So there is one observation here which has an error flag true. This is in MET05, so this should also be regarded, and we see it here, erroneous. Here this one is set, so this one is erroneous, which means, for example, this could be excluded for graphical presentations. And we see here, okay, erroneous, the air temperature was 83.5 degrees. This seems of course to be another valid value, so this could be the reason this measurement was marked as erroneous. So far we did the import, everything worked fine, all the lines were imported to our systems and were spread to our newly created features of our feature type which we chose. And now the next step would be, for example, that we change our import definition and do not use the local file depot anymore, but for example use an FTP server and configure the FTP server we would like to use for our production of our import. Then of course the next step could be that we schedule the import and schedule a job so the import is being done automatically, but this already would be the content of another video. So far I would like to introduce you and suggest you to just try it out on yourself. Create some files on your own, it's not a hard job to do, just open any text editor and write some lines down and try to import the values to any feature type you would like to using our generic import format.